The wind screamed through Ash Hollow like a starving thing. Grit flew under the diner door, dancing over the warped boards where Mary Whitfield stood with a rag in her hand, staring at the lamp flame that wouldn't stay still. The clock on the wall had stopped hours ago, but she didn't need its tick to know it was close to midnight. The saloon next door had gone quiet. No laughter, no boots, no cards slapping on tables. Only the wind. She poured the last of the stew into a tin bowl and set it by the window to cool. Then came the sound, faint at first, swallowed by the storm. A horse stumbling, a man's curse cut short, and the dull collapse of weight hitting dirt. Mary froze. Her hand went to the apron pocket where she kept a paring knife, thumb running over its worn wooden handle. The wind shoved at the shutters. Then knocking. Not polite. Heavy. Desperate. "Who's there?" Her voice cracked like the floorboards. No answer. Only another thud. She crossed to the door, boots whispering across sawdust. When she cracked it open, a shape leaned against the frame, tall, broad-shouldered, hat gone, blood streaking down his side. His eyes met hers only for a heartbeat, dark with fever and fear. "Please," he rasped. "They're behind me." Before she could think, she reached out and caught his arm as he fell. The weight drove them both to their knees. Inside, the lamplight flared across his face, dust-caked, jaw unshaven, shirt torn and dark with blood. She dragged him in, bolted the door, and pressed her back against it, chest heaving. "You can't stay here," she whispered. "I won't long," he muttered, breath hitching. Need a place to stop the bleeding." He tried to stand, and she saw the trail he'd left, red dots across her clean floor. Something inside her twisted. Not fear, not yet. Habit, maybe. The part of her that had once tended bruised cow hands and broken hearts. "Sit," she said sharply. "On that chair. Don't move." He obeyed, collapsing more than sitting. She tore a strip from an old flour sack, grabbed the whiskey from the counter, and poured it over the wound before he could protest. He hissed and grabbed the table edge hard enough to leave dents. "Name?" she asked, voice low. He blinked through the pain. "Elias. Elias Cross." "Mary Whitfield," she replied automatically, tightening the cloth until he grunted. "What's chasing you, Elias Cross?" He didn't answer. His eyes darted to the window. Outside, through the blur of dust and lamplight, she saw it, flickers of torchlight in the storm. 3, maybe 4 riders moving slow through the main street. "Sheriff's men," he said finally. "Say, I killed a ranch foreman." "I didn't." Mary's hand froze on the bandage. A murder suspect in her diner. Just what she needed. "You bring the law to my doorstep. I'll throw you back out myself." He looked at her then, really looked. "You don't strike me as the throwing kind." Her eyes narrowed, the lamplight cutting across her face. "Try me." The torches grew brighter, closer. Hooves thudded against the hard-pan road. She could hear them calling over the wind. Elias pushed himself upright, jaw tight. "If they find me here, you're in danger too." Sheriff Dyer don't care much for witnesses. Mary moved to the door, heartbeat thundering in her ears. The last time Sheriff Dyer had come calling, smoke had taken her husband before morning. A hard knock rattled the wood. Even in Miss Whitfield, a voice called, smooth, false, and far too familiar. "We're looking for a man. Heard he might have come through here." Mary turned to Elias. He was pale, sweat beading on his brow. He shook his head weakly. "If they see me, I'm done." The voice came again, sharp now. "Mary, you open that door or we'll break it down." She hesitated only a second longer. Then Elias's whisper cut through the storm. "If they come a skin, tell them I'm your husband. Just for tonight." Her breath caught. "What? Please." His eyes locked on hers, pleading, tired but steady. "You saved my life. I'll be gone by dawn." Her pulse hammered so hard she could hear it. Husband. It had been years since anyone had spoken that word in her kitchen. Years since the fire, since the graves. The knocking turned into pounding. She swallowed hard, straightened her apron, and whispered back. "Then for one night only, pretend we're in love." She opened the door. Sheriff Dyer stood framed in the dust storm, coat flapping like wings, eyes sharp as tacks beneath the brim of his hat. 2 deputies loomed behind him with rifles half raised. "Evening, Mary," he drawled. "You're up late." "Storm woke me," she said evenly. "Coffee's still hot, if you're wanting some." Dyer's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Appreciate it. I'm after a man. Elias Cross. Rustler. Murderer. You seen anyone riding through?" Mary stepped aside just enough for the lamplight to touch Elias, sitting at her table, bandaged, shirt open at the collar. He lifted his head slowly, eyes bleary but calm. "Evening, Sheriff," he said, voice hoarse. "You're interrupting supper with my wife." The word hung there, wife, and Mary's throat went dry. Dyer's gaze flicked between them. He tipped his hat slightly, smirk widening. "Didn't know you'd remarried, Mary." She forced a small smile. "Ain't much to tell. Quiet ceremony, long way from town." One deputy snorted. The sheriff silenced him with a glance. He looked around the diner, the single lamp, the quiet stove, the bowl of untouched stew. His eyes lingered on the blood-spotted rag beside the sink. "Your husband hurt. Burned his hand on the stove earlier," she said smoothly. "Ain't used to the kitchen." A tense silence. Only the wind moving through the cracks. Then Dyer tipped his hat again. "Well, you two have a pleasant night. Storm's dying down. We'll ride east." He turned, paused at the door. "If you see Cross, Mary, you know where to find me." She held his gaze. "I surely do." When they were gone, the wind took a long breath, as if the whole town exhaled with her. Mary closed the door, leaning against it until her knees trembled. The silence that followed was thick, alive. Elias looked up, the ghost of a smile on his cracked lips. "You lie real good, Mrs. Whitfield." She met his eyes, that old fire flickering behind her calm. "Don't get used to it, Mr. Cross." Outside, the storm rolled east with the lawmen. Inside, only two souls remained, one bleeding, one haunted, and the sound of a single flame refusing to die. The lamp sputtered again, throwing shadows like ghosts across the diner walls. Elias Cross woke with a start, hand flying to his revolver, but his fingers met only air. Mary had taken it, wrapped it in a dish towel, and set it on the high shelf above the stove. "Won't need that while you're under my roof," she said without turning from the counter. Her voice was calm, but her shoulders were tight, jaw clenched. He tried to sit up, winced. "Didn't mean to sleep. You bled near half your life onto my floor. You earn a nap." He chuckled weakly, then groaned. "You always this kind to fugitives?" "Only the ones who ask polite," she said, spooning broth into a tin bowl. "Eat. You'll need strength when you run again." Elias looked at her. Plain calico dress, hair pinned tight, eyes that didn't meet his. There was something behind them, though. Not just fear. History. "You don't trust me," he said. "I don't trust men who bring death to my doorstep," she replied, setting the bowl down in front of him. Before he could answer, hooves thundered down Main Street again, louder this time, closer. She moved to the window, barely parting the curtain. Torchlight swept past, men shouting over the wind. "They're not gone far," she murmured. "Dyer's kind never leave empty-handed." Elias tried to stand, gripping the table edge. "Then I should go." "You won't make it 10 yards," she said. "You can't even hold a gun steady." He hesitated, then slumped back into the chair. "You got a habit of saving lost causes?" Her eyes flicked toward the fire. "Maybe." Silence stretched. The only sound was the wind rattling the sign outside, Mary's kitchen. Finally, Elias said, "You should know, Sheriff Dyer's lying. I didn't kill that foreman." "I figured," she said quietly. He blinked. "That easy to believe?" "No," she replied. "But I know Dyer, and I know what a lie looks like when it wears a badge." He watched her then, really watched her. She kept moving, hands never still, wiping the same clean counter, turning the same spoon. But her voice, her posture, her eyes, they all belonged to someone who'd seen too much and said too little. "Who'd he take from you?" Elias asked softly. She froze. The spoon clattered. For a heartbeat, the storm outside seemed to stop breathing. When she spoke, her voice was a rasp. "My husband. Fire on the North Ridge. Dyer said it was an accident. Said a lamp tipped in the barn." Elias's gaze hardened. "It wasn't." She turned sharply. "How would you know?" "Because it's the same story he told about my brother. Said he rustled cattle, shot the foreman, burned the shed to hide the proof." His voice dropped low, rough. Dyer owns that foreman's land now, just like he owned your husband's after the fire. Mary stared at him. The wind howled, the lamplight flickered, and for the first time she saw not a fugitive, but a man carved from the same betrayal that had built her silence. "So what were you doing out there?" she asked. "Try to make him tell the truth," Elias said. "Didn't go how I planned." She sighed, rubbing her temples. "Justice don't live long in Ash Hollow. Maybe it's time someone brought it back." Mary looked at him, his pale face, the ragged bandage she'd tied too tight, the stubbornness in his eyes. A spark caught somewhere deep in her chest. Before she could answer, something hit the window, a rock, sharp and fast. She ducked. It bounced off the glass, leaving a white spider crack. Elias reached instinctively for his gun, forgetting it wasn't there. "They found me." Mary grabbed the revolver from the shelf and tossed it to him. So much for not needing that. He checked the cylinder. 3 bullets left. "You any good with a rifle?" "Better than I am with a broom," she said, already pulling a Winchester from beneath the counter. She slid a cartridge in and worked the lever smooth as breath. Outside, the voices came clearer now. 4 men, spreading out, boots crunching in the dust. "Cross," one shouted. "You've got no place left to hide." Elias crouched near the door, grimacing as he aimed. "I don't suppose you've got a back exit?" "Cellar hatch, but it's stuck half the time." He smiled faintly. "Figures." They waited, the sound of footsteps circling, a hand testing the latch. Then the door burst open, a shadow filling the frame. Mary fired once. The blast lit the room, throwing sparks off the stove. The man fell without a word, crashing into the threshold. "Guess it wasn't stuck this time," she muttered, levering another round. Elias aimed low, firing through the window at a second silhouette. The glass shattered. The man's shout cut off mid-curse. Then silence, broken only by the slow drip of rain from the eaves. Mary's hands trembled. She'd fired before, long ago, but not since the fire, not since the badge she'd buried with her husband. Elias looked at her across the smoky room. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," she said, voice shaking but sure. "They'd have done worse if I hadn't." He nodded, holstering the revolver. "Remind me never to argue with you." A weak smile ghosted across her face. "Smartest thing you've said all night." He eased back into the chair, blood soaking through his bandage again. She crossed to him, tore a clean strip from her apron, and pressed it against his wound. "Don't talk," she said. "You'll tear the stitches." "I wasn't gonna," he murmured, but his eyes stayed on her, steady, grateful, burning with something unspoken. For a long moment, neither moved. The lamplight glowed soft between them, the storm easing outside. Mary's voice came quiet, almost tender. "When you ride out come dawn, where will you go?" "East," he said. "Find proof Dyer framed me. Clear my brother's name. Maybe mine too." She nodded slowly. "You think justice still listens?" "I think it listens to the ones who make it," he said. She studied him, then reached over and tucked the revolver into his holster. "Then you'd best keep that close." He smiled, tired but real. "You'll make a fine outlaw's wife yet, Mary Whitfield." She looked at him, eyes softening just a fraction. "For one night only, Mr. Cross." The clock ticked once, then stopped again. Outside, thunder rolled far to the east, taking the posse with it for now. Inside, the smell of gunpowder and stew hung thick in the air, and 2 strangers sat in the half-light, bound not by blood or law, but by a deal sealed in bullets and hearts still learning how to beat. The knock came just after dawn, 3 hard strikes that made the dishes on the shelf tremble. Mary froze with a coffee pot halfway to the stove. Elias was gone from his chair, crouched near the back hatch, hand on his gun. His bandage was dark again, too dark. "Stay low," she whispered. The door rattled under another pounding. "Mary Whitfield." "Open up." "Sheriff's orders." Her eyes flicked to the window. 6 horses out front. Dyer's star glinted in the morning sun. She set the coffee pot down, straightened her apron, and opened the door. Dyer stood there with the same smile he'd worn last night, except now it had teeth. His coat was spattered with mud, his badge gleaming clean above it. "Mornin', Mary," he said. "Hope we didn't wake you." "Sun's been up," she answered. "You want breakfast?" or just trouble. He laughed, though there wasn't any humor in it. I want Cross. We found blood on the trail behind her diner. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? She didn't blink. I cleaned a fish this morning. Maybe that's what you found. One of the deputies, a younger one, shifted in his saddle. Sheriff, maybe we... Dyer cut him off with a glare. Search the place. Mary's hand came up fast, palm flat on the doorframe. You don't have a warrant. His smile widened. Don't need one when I smell guilt. He stepped forward, but she didn't move. For a heartbeat, neither did he. Step aside, Mary, he said softly. She didn't. Then he shoved past her, spurs clinking on the floorboards. The deputies followed, boots scraping, eyes flicking over the small room. The bandages on the table, the overturned chair, the dark stains drying near the hearth. Elias was gone, but the cellar hatch lay slightly ajar. Dyer saw it. He kicked it open. The smell of damp earth rose up like a grave breathing. Cross, he called into the dark. Into the road, boy. No answer. Only the creak of the old wood. Mary stood behind him, face carved from stone. He's not here. Dyer turned slowly, studying her. You used to be a good lawwoman, Mary. Shame you forgot which side you were on. The word hit like a shot. Deputy, he said again, louder now, almost mocking. That was the title, wasn't it? Before you decided the badge was too heavy for a woman to wear. Her eyes didn't flinch, but her fingers tightened around the edge of her apron. Before you burned down my ranch, you mean? The room went still. Dyer's grin slipped. Careful what you say. I remember the night, she said quietly. You told my husband you'd buy the land cheap if times got hard. Then the fire came. You showed up before the smoke cleared. He took a step toward her. That's a dangerous story to tell. Only because it's true. Behind him, Elias rose silently from the shadows of the cellar steps, pale, pistol raised. You should have kept your lies buried, Sheriff. Dyer spun, but too slow. Elias's gun roared once, the bullet shattering the rifle in the deputy's hands. Chaos erupted. Mary grabbed the Winchester from the counter and fired, the echo filling every corner of the diner. A deputy crashed through a window. Another fell near the stove. Back, Dyer shouted, dragging a wounded man toward the door. Fall back. The surviving deputies scrambled outside, firing blind through the dust. Elias ducked behind the table, breathing hard, blood dripping from his sleeve. Mary worked the lever again, the sound crisp, final. Not yet, she whispered. But Dyer didn't run far. He stopped at the hitching post, crouched behind a horse trough, reloading. You can't hide forever, he shouted. You shoot me, the whole territory'll come down on you. Mary stepped into the doorway, sunlight catching the iron of her rifle. Maybe that's what it takes. Dyer aimed, fired. The bullet split the wood beside her cheek. She didn't blink. Fire back once. Missed on purpose. Let him feel the air move past his ear. He hesitated, sweat running down his temple. Elias limped up beside her. You don't have to do this, he said low. Yes, she answered. I do. She walked down the steps slow, boots stirring the dust, rifle steady against her shoulder. The town was waking now, curtains parting, doors cracking open. Old men, children, ranch wives, all peeking out at the cook from Mary's kitchen, walking toward the sheriff with a gun in her hand. Dyer rose, voice shaking with anger. You're making a mistake. So did I, she said. I'll let you wear that badge. The crowd's murmur grew. Dyer looked around, saw eyes watching, whispers spreading. His control, the fear that had built his power, was slipping. He fired first. Mary dropped to one knee, returned fire. The shot hit his belt buckle, spun him sideways. Another cracked the trough. Water splashed over the dust, turning it red beneath his boots. He lunged toward her, gun raised, shouting something lost in the wind. Elias's shot stopped him cold. The sheriff staggered, eyes wide, hand clutching his chest. He looked at Mary like a man seeing a ghost. You, he rasped, falling to his knees. You were never meant to wear that badge. She stepped closer, staring down at him. No, she said. I was meant to honor it. He hit the dirt face first. The wind took the sound away. For a long time, no one moved. Then a child's voice called from the crowd. Ma'am, is it over? Mary looked at the smoking gun in her hands, then at the rising sun. It's over. Elias leaned against the doorframe, bleeding, smiling faintly. You just ended a legend. She glanced back at him, eyes soft but steady. No, she said, lowering her rifle. I just reminded it who it belonged to. The townfolk stepped closer, slow, cautious, like waking from a long sleep. Someone knelt by the sheriff's body. Another picked up his badge from the dirt. Mary turned away, walking back toward the diner. The old sign creaked above her, swinging in the wind. Behind her, whispers began to spread. Low at first, then stronger, carried down every street and alley. The widow of Ash Hollow stood up to the law. The cook who shot the sheriff. The woman who took back her town. By noon, every voice in Ash Hollow knew the name. Mary wiped her hands clean, poured 2 cups of coffee, and set one across the table from Elias. He looked at her with quiet wonder. You think they'll ever forget? She shook her head slowly. Some stories ain't meant to be forgotten. Outside, the wind carried her answer through the waking town. The sound of a legend being born from the ashes. The smell of gunpowder still hung in the morning air, heavy as grief. The street outside Mary's kitchen was lined with silence. Not the quiet kind, but the kind that comes after thunder when folks are afraid to speak. Elias Cross sat slumped in a chair near the doorway, one hand pressed to his bleeding shoulder, the other wrapped around a cup of coffee gone cold. His eyes never left the street. Mary stood over the stove, sleeves rolled up, apron stained with soot and blood. She was trembling, but it wasn't fear that shook her. It was the long years of holding still finally giving way. You need a doctor, she said. He smiled faintly. You already saved me once. Don't push your luck. You keep talking like that, you'll bleed out before noon. Then I'll die fed and grateful, he said, voice thin but steady. Outside, the crowd began to move again. 2 men carried Sheriff Dyer's body toward the church. Another hammered a board over the shattered saloon window. The town was rebuilding itself by habit, like folks who'd seen too many endings to trust peace when it came. Mary set a plate in front of Elias, biscuits still warm. Eat, she said. He stared at the food, then at her. You're not staying here after this, are you? Her hand stilled on the counter. They'll come looking, he said. Dyer's friends, the county men. Maybe worse. I've run before, she said quietly. Not again. You can't fight the whole territory. She looked up then, eyes bright but calm. I don't have to. I just have to face it. A long silence stretched between them, filled with the faint hiss of the stove and the steady ticking of the clock that had started working again somehow. Elias broke it. When I ride out, I'll take what proof I've got. Folks will listen now. They saw the truth with their own eyes. You make them remember it, she said. He nodded. You ever think about coming with me? Her lips curved, not quite a smile. You asking, or just being polite? I'm a skin, he said. She met his gaze. For a heartbeat. The room was still except for the wind rattling the shutters. Then she looked away. No, Ash Hollow's mine. Always was. It just forgot me for a while. He pushed himself to his feet, wincing. Then I reckon I'll leave you to it. Mary turned, catching his arm before he reached the door. Not yet. He paused. Mary, for one night only, she said softly, echoing the words that had started it all. Pretend you're staying. Pretend there ain't blood on the floor or smoke in the sky. His throat tightened. I don't know if I can pretend that easy anymore. She stepped closer, her hand still on his sleeve, voice low enough the wind couldn't steal it. Then don't. Just be here. For a long moment, neither spoke. The sun broke through the clouds, spilling gold across the diner, catching the dust motes, the broken glass, the weary faces of 2 people who'd outlived their fear. Outside, children laughed somewhere down the street. The town had begun to breathe again. Elias sat back down. Mary poured them both another cup. You ever miss him? He asked quietly. She didn't have to ask who he meant. Every day. But I think he'd be proud I finally stopped running. He nodded. He'd be proud you won. She smiled faintly. Nobody wins out here, Elias. We just survive longer than the bad ones. He chuckled, then grimaced as pain cut through his shoulder. You make surviving sound noble. It ain't noble, she said. It's necessary. The light dimmed as a cloud passed over the sun. A soft knock came at the door. Mary tensed, rifle still within reach. A small boy's voice called through. "Ma'am, the deputy says he needs to see you." She opened the door to find Tom Avery, a young man barely 20, holding Dyer's badge in his hand. His face was pale, his eyes too old for his years. "Town voted," he said, voice shaking. "They want you to take this. Said no one else has got the spine for it." Mary stared at the badge, the same one that once burned her family's name to ash. Elias watched from behind her. "You gonna take it?" She turned the badge over in her hand, the metal cool against her skin. For a long time, she didn't answer. Finally, she closed her fist around it. "No," she said. "Not me. Him." She nodded toward the young deputy. "You wear it. You remember what it's supposed to mean." Tom hesitated, then nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, ma'am." When he was gone, Mary walked to the window, watching the townsfolk gather again. Some waved. Others simply tipped their hats. Not out of fear, out of respect. Elias stood beside her, hat in hand. "You gave the town back its law." She looked at him. "And you'll give it back its truth." He smiled. "Guess we both did what we came for." They stepped outside together. The air was clean now, the storm gone. The sun had dried the mud into pale dust, and the street shimmered with the star of heat. Elias tightened the reins on his patched-up horse. "You sure you won't change your mind?" She shook her head. "You ride east. I'll hold the line here." He swung into the saddle with a grimace and tipped his hat. "Then this is goodbye." Mary smiled, the kind that comes from a place deeper than words. "Maybe, or maybe just until next season." He laughed softly, the sound carrying down the street. "For one night only, huh?" She met his gaze. One night was enough. He nodded once, then turned the horse toward the horizon. Dust rose behind him, catching the sunlight until he was just a shimmer on the edge of forever. Mary stood there until he disappeared, the wind tugging at her apron, the sound of hooves fading like a heartbeat in the distance. When she finally turned back toward the diner, the townsfolk were already at work, rebuilding, sweeping glass, hammering shutters. A new day for Ash Hollow. The old storyteller's voice seemed to rise on the wind as she walked back inside.